All right. We're back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Thanks for joining with us. If you're just joining us, we're in our fourth and final segment. Today is November 13th. It's Hump Day. And this particular segment is called Amnesty is Treason. Now, you can substitute the word equals for is, but you cannot substitute anything for the word treason. This is only my opinion. I'm not saying that you should adopt it. I'm saying that you should take this segment, hear what I have to say, as a good critical thinker will, evaluate the evidence, go out and do some due diligence and do your own homework, and then make a decision for yourself. I don't want you to sycophantically reiterate what I say. I don't want you to buy my opinion and carry it around and pull it out when it's appropriate, or you think it's appropriate, and parrot it. I want you to formulate your own. The only way you're going to accomplish that is to go out there and truly educate yourself about all the myriad issues that surround it. Now, we've been hearing talk, and there's an enormous amount of pressure being applied to the House to pass an immigration reform bill, a comprehensive immigration reform bill, like the one already passed by the traitors in the Senate. Yes, I did use the word traitors, and I meant to. You see, this is treason. I'm going to explain to you how. When you betray the constituency and the citizenship of the individuals who make up your government, who you owe your fiduciary allegiance and responsibility to, when you violate your oath as a representative of them in a republican democracy, in a constitutional republic, then you have committed an act of treason. And it is not in the best interest of Americans for 11.5 million, which is their estimate. The true numbers are actually about 20 to 25 million, and that doesn't count the chain migration that Congress has already incorporated into the Senate's version of their comprehensive immigration reform plan, which will allow that number to actually quadruple. So let's take their best estimate and say it's 11.5 million. That's 23 million. Quadruple that, that's 40. To quadruple the original number, that's 46 million. Brand new, newly minted, amnestetized. Is that a word? Amnestetized Americans who will be able to apply for health care, the right to vote, jobs. Now, we have a massive problem in this country right now with what? Employment. I mean, right now, we are at an all-time high in Americans, in our lifetime, in Americans who are not working. So, according to U.S. Debt Clock, and I talked about this yesterday, there are 91 million Americans, actually it's 91 plus, but 91 million Americans who are not actually in the labor force. Now, these are people who were previously in the labor force, but they're no longer capable of being in the labor force because they either can't get a job or they've given up or whatever the case may be. And we're about to add, even at their numbers, 11 million more. How insane is that? You see, the argument that's put forth for you to buy into immigration is this. It's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. Well, I want you to challenge yourself today, and I want you to put some critical thinking skills into play. And I want you to think about a well-reasoned, intellectually honest argument. First and foremost, let's recognize that the United States of America, irrespective of whatever side of the ideological fence you're on, is a nation that has its own borders. It is sovereign. We have our own form of government, and we don't allow other countries to impose their political philosophies and ideals on us. By the same token, our government has a vested interest and a fiduciary responsibility to act on the best interests of those people who make up the electorate. We elected this group of people. We gave them delegated authority to act on our behalf in matters that incorporated the benefits of the entire nation. Allowing 11 million people into the nation who, I don't dispute they're already here, but to give them citizenship without the appropriate loopholes closed first is an act of treason. Now look, for the record, there are many powers that government has been granted as a result of the Constitution. In other words, the principles behind the Constitution were pretty obvious. We wanted a government that could act on the behalf of all Americans, and we wanted a government that would be able to have certain powers to be able to accomplish those tasks. But we limited it, and we expressly limited it to a delegated level of authority that defines the limited power of government. One of the only operations that Congress has, and the president, and the judicial system, is to operate in our best interest, and to protect and defend the border from invasion. Now, I submit to you that what's happening right now with 11 million foreigners in the country, and by the way, they're not all from the southern border. Half the people that currently live in the United States of America that are here illegally, they're not undocumented, they're illegal. Let's stop using the PC phrase that they want us to use, and let's declare them what they are. Let's stop gilding the lily. Let's stop putting a nice glossy coat of varnish over dog excrement and call this stuff what it is. Not just immigration, health care, and all the rest of this abuse that's going on. It is tyranny and it is treason. And it's time we started calling it that. Because when we face the reality of it, when we use the correct word to describe the correct behavior, then and only then have we acknowledged its existence. We are no longer in a state of denial, and we can take corrective action to resolve the problem. And in this power that we gave government, one of the few expressed primary concerns that they were given to deal with was security of the nation's border, to protect individual states and the nation as a whole from invasion. And I submit to you that what we have today with 11.5 million, and if that's the number we'll use because that's their official number, but the truth is we all know it's higher, is an invasion. It's not an invasion with, guys running across in green uniforms going pop, 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 pop. But it's an invasion nonetheless. It's an invasion that is affecting our economic system, our education system, our healthcare system, our financial system, our electorate system, our electoral system, I should say. You see, the impact is so far-reaching that it touches every aspect of our lives. It's taking jobs. It's stealing the resources that the taxpayers are required to pay by groups of individuals who are not participating in the financial expense and weight of carrying this, and yet are benefiting from that self-same sacrifice that you and I are putting forth. And government, the federal government specifically, was given the power and the obligation to protect our borders. And the oath that every senator and every congressman and every president and every judge takes is to uphold and defend the Constitution and to protect the nation from what? All enemies, foreign and domestic. So if that's the case, and the people who are coming over here, I mean, I get it. You don't want to brand them an enemy because we don't want to sit there and you know, throw them under the bus completely. They're human beings, and I get it, and I understand why they're here. I guess if I lived there, I'd try it too. But it doesn't excuse the behavior. And because you're hungry doesn't give you a right to go rob a bank. And it doesn't give you a right to steal from someone else. And it doesn't give them a right to steal from our country. I appreciate their need. I appreciate their desire. I don't appreciate their pressure to incorporate their need into our need. It's not the same thing. And when we talk about the border and immigration as a general consensual idea among Americans, most Americans believe that we probably should figure out something to do with these people without kicking them out. And I'm not totally in disagreement with that. I don't advocate that we pack them all up on buses and airplanes and shoot them back. That's not what I advocate at all. So those of you of the liberal persuasion who have already disconnected, stop. And if you were about to, stop. What I do advocate is that before any other discussion happens, before any arrangements are made, that we handle immigration not in a comprehensive way, but in a step-by-step, logical, well-reasoned, thought-out process that encourages us to look at the unintended consequences of those actions before we just go out there and throw something against the wall and see what sticks. Or before we allow moneyed interests and cronyism to determine what our new policy will be. What I do advocate is this. I advocate that we seal the border physically. We've sealed and blocked a border that's 160 miles in length between North and South Korea. We've sealed that border for the last 60 years. And listen, not a fly gets over. So why can't we seal our border? I know it's big. I know it's long. I know it's vacant land in a lot of places. And I hear all the arguments that it's almost impossible. It's not impossible. We have 80,000 soldiers that we just brought back from Afghanistan and Iraq. The truth of the matter is that if we wanted to stop it, where there is a will, there is a way. And Americans have always shown that as a level of exceptionalism. And until the border is sealed, and until the border is locked down where no one can cross, everything else that we talk about after that is a lie. We've been through this before. Back in the days of Reagan, when Reagan was pressured to perform and grant amnesty. He did it under the premise that, and the promise, frankly, that the Democratic representation was going to seal the border. And here we are, 30 years later, having the same conversation all over again. Why? Because they have no intention of sealing the border now either. And after they get comprehensive immigration reform, mission creep, as always comes out of tyrants and tyranny and traitors, will rule and seize the day. And the border will remain open, and the barricades will come down, and the flood will continue. If you truly want immigration reform in this country, and I believe we do need it, the first thing that we do is seal the border. The patient's lying on the ground. We've come upon the scene. There's a leg that's been amputated. And there are numerous other wounds. Which do you tackle first? Well, first thing first, you get over there and you tie a tourniquet around that leg and you stop the bleeding. Because if that arterial bleeding continues, the patient will die. And all of our other efforts will be fruitless. So the first thing you do is you stop the bleeding. And after you've accomplished that, then you begin to deal with the other wounds. And these are wounds, national wounds. There are national wounds of race relations. There are national wounds of economic power. There are national wounds of the change that is being fostered and driven through our society. The truth of the matter is, we have an obligation to seal the border first. To open a period after that sealing has been accomplished that says for a window of 6 or 12 months. And by the way, if you want to talk more about this and you want to comment on it, and you have an idea, or you want to expand on it, or whatever, email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. I'll be happy to talk about it. But the concept should be simply this: seal the border first. Once we've locked that border down and it is sealed tighter than a drum, then and only then do we have a period that is 6 to 12 months where all current people in this nation, unauthorized, undocumented, illegally, must come forward out of the shadows and say, I am here. I am stating to you today that I want to stay. I recognize I have done wrong, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to remain here and become a true, valuable citizen for the benefit of the overall country as well as my own personal benefit. By coming out of the shadows, I will be able to gain gainful employment. I will be able to pay taxes. I will be able to reap the benefits of being a member of this society that I left my failed state to come to here because it was better. And I'm going to work to better that betterness. Those who will not come forward, those who refuse to participate, we have to make the general assumption that they don't have the best interests of the nation at heart. Because if we're saying to them, when you come forward and register, there are going to be penalties. You're going to have to pay a fine. You're going to have to go out on the, you come to the tail end of the list to be able to be given. You get a green card as a temporary card. We're not throwing you out. But we are saying that you're not entitled to all the rights and privileges of living here because you have not exposed yourself to the responsibilities that entitle you to those rights and privileges. And you go to the back of the line, and you pay a fine, and you begin to pay taxes, and you begin to show yourself approved. You begin to demonstrate to us that you are an acceptable new member of our nation. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the only step that should be taken. And until that step is taken, everything else goes on the back burner. No immigration until the borders are verifiably, independently verifiably, by the way, not by the Department of Homeland Security, who's telling us that borders down to a trickle. The heck it is. I want independent verification by an objective group, a committee who is not paid for by government, who is not dominated and controlled by government, to say this border is truly verifiably sealed. Now, we open up the registration window and we say there is an amnesty period where you can step up to the plate and say, I'm here illegally and I want to do something about it. I want to do the right thing. You register with us. You say, this is who I am. This is where I live. This is where I work. I'm going to begin to pay taxes. I'm going to become a productive member of this society which I desire to join, which I desire to gain the benefits of. And then and only then can we figure out how long a term it is, how high is the penalty, what kind of issues surround that. But this nonsense about passing comprehensive immigration reform, and you've got a guy out there like Gutierrez, who is an absolute monster of a traitor. He says Congress should stay after Thanksgiving and Christmas in order to pass the amnesty. He's from Illinois. He's an immigrant himself. He wants to create a pathway to citizenship for all the country's illegal immigrants. Listen, from a moral perspective, I'm okay with that. From a moral perspective, I don't want to separate children and parents. I don't want to separate grandchildren from their grandparents. I don't want to separate families. But what I will tell you is that they have placed themselves in this position. We haven't invited them here. And they have to be responsible for their actions, just like you do. And if you think walking into a courtroom and saying, I stole from that bakery because my child was hungry is going to give you a pass, you're wrong. And so why should I came here illegally because my children were hungry be an acceptable excuse for a violation of our society, of our laws, of our border? It's not. If that becomes a justifiable excuse for bad behavior and actions that are detrimental to society as a whole, then we may as well empty the jails and let all the bank robbers and the rapists and right? You can't have it both ways, folks. You either have a law that applies to everybody, or you rescind the law because it doesn't apply to anybody. Immigration reform, and any time that you hear the word comprehensive, know that you are getting shafted, because there's going to be a ton of garbage in that bill that has absolutely nothing to do with it, including the one that the Senate has passed, with a ton of giveaways to cronies and friends and buddies and pals, and a lot of kickbacks going on. The simple truth is this: we need to have immigration tackled one step at a time, starting with a border that is sealed, locked tight. Now, whether that takes the form of a physical wall or a wall combined with fences with a separation of a dead man's zone in between, a no man's land or whatever you want to call it, I don't know what that takes. Whether that takes literally guys standing elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder locked, physically standing there, that's okay with me. But the problem is so large that if that's the consequence of taking care of the problem, that is an acceptable solution. The drain on our society, the change, the fundamental change in our society, the way in which Americans are being tasked, in fact, quite honestly, robbed to pay for all of this, is unacceptable. The government's obligation is to protect the border, to protect the states from invasion. And this is an invasion. Gutierrez says, I think it's unconscionable the Congress of the United States is going to go away for Thanksgiving with their families. We're going to go away for Christmas with our families, while our broken immigration system continues to destroy tens of thousands of families. With all due respect, Mr. Gutierrez, those people put themselves in that position. When a father goes to prison for doing something illegal, he robs a bank or he steals or he hurts someone, his children are deprived of him too. That is not an excuse, sir. And you cannot stand in front of that judge and say, Your Honor, don't put me in jail because my children are going to suffer and my wife's going to suffer. Why is it for them? Why is that an acceptable argument, Mr. Gutierrez? Because you don't want to stand on the pillars of logic and reason. You don't want to utilize critical thinking. You want to bypass all of that in favor of your number one tool, emotionalism. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is shameful, because what it does is it takes the context of the argument away from those factors and features which are truly in your best interest, and it says, throw all of that away and let your tears and your fears rule the day. We don't run a country on emotionalism. If you ran a company that way, they wouldn't be in business. Well, we're not going to sell our products. We're just going to give them all away. Really? Where are you going to get enough money to manufacture the next round of those products? You see, there are some basic rules of natural law. And Mr. Gutierrez, this natural law says that you cannot descend into emotionalism to explain away treason. And that, sir, is exactly what you're trying to do. Your own constituents in Illinois should toss you out on your ear, tarred and feathered. They have until November of 2014 to accomplish that task, and I pray they do. America, contact your representatives in the House, because the Senate's already passed their version of the Treason Act. And make sure that you express the following to them. No immigration until the border is independently, verifiably sealed. After that, sir or madam, we can have any discussion you want. But until that is achieved, no immigration is acceptable. No immigration act. No comprehensive this, no single that. One thing. Pass that first, and then we'll have any discussion you want. And that says this border is independently, verifiably sealed, and everyone has registered. We can wait a year for the registration. We've been at this for the last 100. I don't think one more year after the border is sealed is going to really hurt us that bad. Will it, Mr. Gutierrez? Or are you just trying to give us the bum's rush? You see, it's always an urgent crisis when you want your way. Well, James Madison told us about people like you. You know what he said? Crisis is the rallying cry of the tyrant. And Mr. Gutierrez, I recognize you for who you are. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. If you agree with me on this topic or you disagree with me on this, please send me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. Find our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can also find our YouTube channel where we post this and every other program that we do. You can find that by going to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. You can go to Spreaker.com. That's SPREAKER.com/America's Voice Now. And you can download a copy of this particular podcast on an audio format alone. And we'd love to hear from you. Mike@AmericasVoiceNow.org. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Remember, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is when good men do nothing. Have a great day.